Hey, everybody. Good afternoon. Happy Thursday. Our leadership team, I see them in the YouTube chat. Mary and Leslie are there. So if you are in the chat, be sure to chat them up, say hello to them. They are amazing activists and just really working hard to help spread the truth and educate other citizens about what's going on in our government. Welcome to our weekly Thursday live stream. I am Julie Barrett, and I'm the founder of Conservative Ladies of America, which got our start in the state of Washington. We got our sea legs under us in Washington State, which is a very good training ground if you're going to be engaged in government and politics and things like that. So we are well versed in woke speak, whether it's from the left or from the right. And we're going to get into that today. So if you are joining us on the live stream, say hello in the chat. We'd love to hear from you and would love to hear where you are watching from. We have a lot of friends, of course, in Washington, but we are expanding our reach and we have people always joining us from across the country. And it's really cool to see you guys joining from other places around the country. Leslie is from Republic. Mary Long is over in Spokane. Both of those are in Eastern Washington, for those of you who are not familiar. I, of course, am in Sarasota, Florida. I don't know if that's an of course or not. If you watch the live stream, you know that I am in Florida. So we have a lot to cover today. And some of it may be a little, I say controversial, but I don't know why it's controversial. It's something that is very constitutional, which to me is really pretty cut and dry. But this is a really important issue, especially for people who consider themselves to be conservatives. This is something that we really need to take a really hard look at. And it's about free speech. But before we get into that, I want to, for our folks in Washington, I know last week the New York City mayor's race was all like done and counted. I think it was a blowout. So that night of the election, it was fine. Sorry, I just had a notification, so my mind did that little thing. The night of the election, it was very decisive because he was ahead by so much. But Seattle is another issue. And if you are a Washington voter, or if you've ever been a Washington voter, you are likely painfully aware of how circus-like, what a clown show it is with Washington elections. And this goes back decades. Washington has actually had these mail-in election laws going back to the 80s. And they have done what most politicians do, both left and right. They have slow walked this over the decades to where it is now in Washington, where it's almost a joke to even vote. My first time voting was in 2004, which was the Dino Rossi thing. I won't go into all of that because if you are from Washington or were in Washington in 2004, you remember that election. Dino Rossi ran for governor. He won the first two counts of the election. But when they did the third count, miraculously, they found these ballots in trunks and all sorts of places. And Christine Gregoire, the Democrat, ended up winning the election. And we have not had a Republican governor since, gosh, somebody help me. It's been like 40 years or something like that. So that whole situation in 2004 was very disenfranchising to Washington state voters, myself included. I did not vote again until 2016, and I only voted for Donald Trump. So anyway, all that to circle back to the Seattle mayor's race. They're still counting ballots a week and 2 days after the election. I don't think they certify their election for like 3 days or 3 weeks, something like that. Anyway, at the outset, it looked like Bruce Harrell was going to win his bid for re-election. But in the last couple of recounts, the socialist communist candidate, Katie Wilson, who doesn't appear to have a lick of experience or qualifications to be the mayor of a major metropolitan city like Seattle. But really, are any of these people in Washington state qualified as is? So in the chat, if you're watching live in the chat, my daughter is in the chat. Hannah is there. So shout out to my daughter, Hannah. She was like, I'm going to jump on your live stream and watch you. So there's Hannah. And John Meek from Bothell. Good to see you, John. Welcome. Okay, so let's take a look at, let's see. Here we go. This is the latest on the Seattle mayor's race as of last night. 55.31%. Is that the number of people who vote, the percentage of people who voted? And Wilson is ahead by about 1,900 votes. And I think she is enough ahead that they don't have to do a recount. I believe you have to be 0.5% ahead to not need to do a recount. So it's looking very bad for the city of Seattle, which is very sad, very discouraging for me to see. I'm sure for all of you as well. Seattle and Washington at large continues to go further and further to the left. And every year the Republicans are like, oh, the Democrats have gone too far. Voters are tired of it. And they're going to elect, a common sense, maybe a common sense, Democrat, if there is such a thing, or, a moderate Republican. And it just doesn't happen at all in Washington. And we just keep seeing things continually go further to the left. We get more radical candidates. I mean, it's pretty sad that in this particular race, we were all like pulling for Bruce Harrell to be reelected because he was the lesser of two evils. And Bruce Harrell is terrible and has done very poorly for the city. So that's kind of where things are at with Seattle. And I think it's going to, I think as you continue to see Seattle and Western Washington go very much radical left, kind of off the left cliff, if they could possibly go any further off the left cliff, I think it's becoming very apparent that the city, will just focus on the city of Seattle for right now, that the city of Seattle is beyond saving. It is going to have to completely fall and self-destruct before it can be rebuilt. And sadly, that will probably not be in any of our lifetimes for those of us watching, including my 19-year-old daughter who's on the live stream right now. I don't think it can come back anytime soon. I think we're several decades away from a rebuild of the city of Seattle, which is really sad because it's such a beautiful city. I was born and raised in Seattle. I raised my children in Seattle. And, as a young adult, doing the club scene in your early 20s, it was a safe place to be, and it wasn't what it is today. So it's really sad. Let's just, since we've got this up, let's look at the city attorney race. We've got Ann Davison, who is losing her reelection bid, and Safe Seattle, I think it is, on X. And I think they're on Facebook too. I don't know if it's a guy or a gal who runs that account, but if you look up Safe Seattle, they wrote up a really good post yesterday about why Ann is losing her bid for reelection. She sued the Trump administration, and what a way to disenfranchise your Republican voters. You're suing the Trump administration. She has severe TDS. I've never really considered her a Republican, but of course, if you're on the ballot in the city of Seattle, you're probably a Democrat wearing a red coat. So, that's what you get in the city of Seattle. So very sad to see what is going on there. So for our Washington friends, I'm sorry. Would love to hear from you guys in the comments. I'm seeing some some fun comments about the Seattle mayor. I know the city of Spokane also has picked up some seats for the Democrats, which is also not a good thing. Spokane used to be like your conservative haven of Washington State, but over the last decade, they have become really kind of Seattle's little sister and really have gone to the left and keep going farther left. So that's unfortunate. So that's what we've got for the Seattle mayor. And as you probably are all well aware, the government shutdown has ended. I have to be honest, I haven't really looked at all the details that were in the CR. I don't know. I know there's something about hemp and a loophole about hemp or THC that was closed. I haven't done a deep dive on that yet to be able to talk to you about what that's all about. But I will look into that. But anyway, the government is back open. What I have thought was interesting, because the last government shutdown was during Trump's first term, and I wasn't geeking out on policy yet like I am now. And it's been interesting to watch Congress continue to file all of these pieces of legislation every single day of the shutdown. They have literally, and I don't like that word, but I have to use it here because it's correct. They have literally filed hundreds of bills, pieces of legislation during the 42 whatever days it was shut down. And my whole thing with, and nobody would ever elect me because people always want lawmakers to pass bills or to vote to pass bills. And I'm more of the less government is better kind of attitude mindset. And I believe that we have a lot of bad laws that we need to repeal. So how about we just slow the train down, start repealing some of these bad laws that we've got on the books. We don't need hundreds of new policies and regulations and laws against the citizens. It's just more big government. And the Republicans are just as guilty of this as Democrats. And they want to pass bills and policies, obviously whatever side they're on, they think it's good for the citizens. And so they message about it. And truly, I just we just don't need more laws. And I wish more citizens understood this. And I wish that more people understood. And we talked about this in the live stream yesterday that I did with the Grayson County conservatives about how, there's such strategic messaging from these lobbyists and policy organizations, think tanks, and people conservative organizations and politicians, and they're all messaging, and even influencers, social media influencers. That's a big issue right now, because that's become such a big thing and such a big way for politicians to put out their messaging, or lobbyists or think tanks to put out their messaging through these conservative social media influencers and podcasters and people that the citizens have come to trust and like. And it's very discouraging. And just to, have sort of a moment of transparency with you all. Well, all my moments, I'm transparent, but it's been very discouraging to really see people just kind of going along with whatever their favorite influencer is saying, whatever Trump is saying, even if it's stuff that's potentially going to be harmful to our country or harmful to our citizens. And, Trump is floating some not great policies, the H-1B visa thing that he's promoting. And he went on Laura Ingraham the other day and said that we need to import 600,000 Chinese students because we don't have enough American students. We don't have enough talent here in America to do the jobs, which I think is... It's terrible. I mean, American students can't even get into college. If you are a white male, you're really going to have a tough time, even if you are a superstar student, because of the whole diversity, equity, and inclusion policies with admissions. And if you can overcome that hurdle, hopefully you have enough money to be able to go to a college or you're going to have to take out a bunch of debt. And a lot of kids don't want to take out a bunch of debt. And speaking of debt, another one of his policies or ideas, I should say, that he floated was this 50-year mortgage. And people don't think about the ripple effects of something like that. They just think, oh, well, it's a person's choice. They can decide if they want to take on a 50-year mortgage or not. But there is a huge ripple effect. It's really going to influence the market. The other thing is, do we really want our young people to be so saddled with debt to never be able to own their home? Let's say they bought their first home at 30. They're not going to be done paying that home off until they're 80 years old. We could get it. And the whole, our topic here isn't so much about that, but we could get into, some of the arguments about, well, they could refi or, they could sell or whatever. But the problem is there are going to be a lot of ripple effects into the real estate market and the housing market that are not going to be good. And another thing that's interesting, Charlie Kirk did an interview with Tucker Carlson. I want to say it was like July or August, probably July. And he talked a lot about the buy now, pay later, and how a lot of the Gen Z are doing this BNPL, buy now, pay later, for everything from going, from their Amazon purchases, Shopify purchases, even ordering a pizza. You can buy now, pay later, and you can make payments, and it's not regulated as credit cards are. And so it allows these, if you default on your payments, it can have very negative impacts, and it can be very costly. And so our young people are financing everything. It's totally unaffordable. Our country is so unaffordable for even the average person. I was talking to my daughter last night about the $2,000 rebates for people under $100,000. I remember when, if you made six figures, you were wealthy. And we've got the minimum wage going up and all that stuff. So all of these things are just kind of, people defend Trump because he's Trump, and we defend Trump at all costs. And, he can do whatever he wants because he's Trump, and it's 40 chess, and, trust the plan. But we're seeing a lot of things that are not good for Americans. They're not good for young people. They're not good for our families. And it's really important for citizens to educate themselves about these things, which is why I and our team at Conservative Ladies of America really try hard to dig into these policies that impact your daily lives and really make it make sense, because I know it can be overwhelming to look at a bill and try to read the bill and wonder, okay, well, but how does this impact me? So with that said, let's dive into our topic today, which is the hate speech laws that are being passed around the country post 10/7/2023, after after what happened, the Hamas attack on Israel. This has been interesting to me. I started diving into this before Charlie Kirk was assassinated, because there were a couple of congressional bills that one of them actually passed through the House, but it didn't go anywhere in the Senate. That was in 2024. But then there was another bill this year in May that, fortunately, I honestly, Charlie Kirk single-handedly killed this bill. There's another one in Congress now. It's called the Stop Hate Act. So now that the government is open, we need to keep our eyes on some of these bad bills. But at a state level, these policies have been passed or either by legislation or through executive order in 37 states. Most of them are red states. And what they do is they take the International Holocaust Remembrance Association, IHRA. They adopt their definition of anti-Semitism, which is extremely broad, and it classifies it as hate speech. And so I want to show you what this is all about, where this is because it passed here in Florida in 2024. And if you're familiar with Randy Fine, who is a former state senator from Florida, he was one of the co-sponsors of this bill. He is now a congressional representative from the East Coast of Florida, and he is vile. I mean, he's huge pro-Israel. And he says very vile things about the Gazan babies that, have been killed, and he's just an awful person. So there's a guy named Aaron Baker here in Florida running to unseat him next year. And Aaron seems like a good dude from everything I can see. So I will be doing whatever I can to try to help support him. Of course, he's on the other side of the state, so I don't know how much I can do. But so I want to show you guys this. It is let's try this. There we go. Okay. Hopefully you guys can see that. So this is I wanted to show you what their definition is before we go into the legislation and where the legislation is. So their definition is anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews. Now I want to stop here for a second because I have opposed a lot of hate speech legislation in Washington state. And one of the things that I always talk about when I am testifying against it is this perception. Like, in Washington, it's perception of people's gender identity or gender expression. Anytime, we can't make laws based on perception. So anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews, which may be expressed as hatred towards Jews. Rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism are directed towards Jewish or non-Jewish individuals and or their property, towards Jewish community institutions and religious facilities. Now, I highlighted down below here where they talk about manifestations might include. So criticism of Israel similar to that levied against any other country cannot be regarded as anti-Semitic. So I don't know how they would judge that. Like, are they going to compare, like, if let's say they were looking at my X feed, are they going to compare to see if I made similar criticisms of other countries? I don't know. Anti-Semitism frequently charges Jews with conspiracy, conspiring to, sorry, you guys, it's really small on my screen, harm humanity, and is often used to blame Jews for why all things go wrong, expressed in writing, visual forms, and action, and employs sinister stereotypes and negative character traits. Let's see if we can go to the second one. Okay. So these are some contemporary examples of how anti-Semitism could be used in public life. If you guys want, I can, I have this in our Substack, so I will share the Substack link here in just a minute. But I've kind of highlighted some of the things that I thought were interesting or could be really taken out of context if somebody's just kind of mouthing off on social media or in a Discord chat, or, you've got all these gamers that live stream their gaming, and, could they, say something like, for instance, here, making malicious, dehumanizing, demonizing, or stereotypical allegations about Jews as such of the power of Jews as collective. Then down below, I highlighted accusing Jewish citizens of being more loyal to Israel. There was a video that went viral, I think it was last week, of Brett Cooper, formerly from the Daily Wire. She's a podcaster. She's a Gen Zer. And she said, I think it was about Randy Fine. She told Randy Fine, if you love Israel so much, go live in Israel. So would that speech be accusing Randy of being more loyal to Israel than America? And those are some things that I think we would definitely see that, especially as we see things heating up. I think these are things that we're going to be seeing. And then drawing comparisons of contemporary Israeli policy to that of the Nazis, and that's something that you hear people saying on social media and kind of flippantly. And I want it to be clear, I don't agree with those types of statements. I am not, the Israel discussion is such a loaded thing, and it's very emotional for a lot of people. And so I don't want to get into an Israel discussion about, like, what, as far as like the foreign affairs kind of thing. But I think that I do believe that citizens should be able to ask questions about Israel's involvement in our government, about their influence on our politicians, our funding of Israel. And I asked just as many questions about Ukraine. And like when we had, what's Zelensky always coming over and talking to Congress. And I thought that was terrible. I didn't think he should be doing that. Especially in his sweats. And the same with Netanyahu. I mean, I think that these are things that we, as American people, we should be able to ask these questions without being called an anti-Semite. And so this is one of, my big concerns about these particular policies, is that they are going to stifle the free speech of people like you and I. And, if you wanted to ask some questions about the Israeli government and its influence on us, and, when you have a guy like Randy Fine, who I don't have a clip of it right now, but he spoke at that Republican Jewish convention thing a couple of weeks ago. And really it sounded like, Brett Cooper was not off. It sounded like he would rather be living in Israel than living in America. And I think we as Americans must be allowed, and it is our duty to make sure that our representatives are representing our interests as the American people. And so that's kind of my biggest issue here. So let's take a look at, I want to show you the timeline here. And then we'll go into, I'm going to tell you a little bit about, we're going to talk about 3 specific ones. So starting on May 2nd, this is when the House passed HR 6090. It was the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act. It passed the House 320 to 91. There were 187 Republicans who voted yes on this. And this is the one that I was saying Charlie Kirk basically single-handedly defeated this bill. And I'll show you his tweet here. In response to campus anti-Israel protests, the House is rushing to vote on a new bill, HR 6090. The new bill would officially define anti-Semitism so the federal government can sue, prosecute, and sanction more people, businesses, and universities for supposed violations of civil rights law. I abhor anti-Semitism, but this bill is flagrantly unconstitutional and an appalling attack on the First Amendment. This bill would make it illegal to compare Israeli policies to Nazi policies. That's what I just showed you guys in the IHRA definition. It would make it illegal to describe Israel as racist. It would make it illegal to accuse an American citizen of being more loyal to Israel than to the United States. All of these behaviors may be stupid or repugnant, but they are indisputably protected by the First Amendment. Yet now, congressional Republicans are rushing to gut the First Amendment in order to pass a Europe-style ban on hate speech. And of course, rioters should be arrested. Unhinged Israel-hating students who take over buildings and refuse to leave should be expelled. This is a bad bill. And it's interesting to me to see, in the wake of Charlie's assassination, how many legislators around the country, whether it's at a federal level or at a state level, or are calling on this kind of policy to be enacted. And they'll use, they will often point to Charlie Kirk as for why we need to do it. So I want to talk to you a little bit about, I'll bring the timeline back up here in a minute, but I want to talk to you a little bit about the Florida bill, because a couple of weeks ago, Ron DeSantis said he was going to do a new program fostering debates at Florida universities, and they would have a debate challenge or something every year, a competition every year, and the winner would be given a Charlie Kirk debate award. And I thought that was interesting because in 2024, Florida passed House Bill 187, which adopted the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism into Florida law. As I mentioned earlier, this was co-sponsored by then Senator Randy Fine. And this bill applies to schools and universities. Examples from the IHRA definition that I just read to you could influence civil rights enforcement and student discipline. They do have a First Amendment clause in the bill. However, that wouldn't necessarily prevent a student from being punished or potentially even being expelled. And so think about this. If you are a student who's going to have a debate in this, competition that Ron DeSantis is talking about and giving out an award, this state-sponsored competition, you're going to be really careful what you say about Israel in your debate. And you're going to form your talking points so that you can't be penalized for potentially saying something that goes against Florida's House Bill 187. So I think this bill, and I tweeted to DeSantis, and I don't know if he or any of his people saw it, but I did tweet to him and I said, you need to take a look at House Bill 187 that was passed in 2024, because it's going to stifle this free speech that you're saying you want to increase and encourage on college campuses. So I think it's important for people to understand, especially our friends in blue states, is that even in these red states, even Republicans in Congress are working to push policies that aren't always good. They don't always align with the Constitution. That's something I try to be very consistent about. I measure every piece of legislation against the Constitution. If it is unconstitutional, I can't support it. So even if I like the legislator who is sponsoring the piece of legislation, if it's unconstitutional, I can't support it. And that's an area in politics that makes it very difficult, because if you want to be an activist that is, judging everything based on the Constitution, you're going to run into a bunch of dead ends with legislators who are on the Republican side, consider themselves to be conservatives. And if you don't support their policy, then that's probably going to influence their relationship with you. And they, at least from what I have experienced, is if I don't support everything that the Republicans in the legislature want, whatever their policies are, then it's made it very difficult for us to work together on areas where we do agree. And I think that's very unfortunate, because there are a lot of areas that we do agree, and there are always going to be places where we don't. And so it's interesting, because conservatives are always about free thinking and independent thought. And yet, if you don't go along with whatever the group think on the conservative side is, you are the problem child. So Texas recently passed a similar bill to Florida. They passed it in April, and it had an emergency clause on it. So when it was signed into law by Governor Abbott in May, it took effect immediately. And the Texas law is a little bit more, I guess, robust than Florida's law. Texas is SB 326. This particular law pertains to public schools and institutes of higher education. They must consider the IHRA definition when determining if student behavior is anti-Semitic. The language of the bill says may reasonably be determined. So it's anti-Semitism if it may reasonably be determined. That's very, law should be pretty black and white. Reasonably determined is really gray. So that's very vague language, very dangerous language. And I really have a problem with this vague language when it comes to hate speech and hate crime laws, because I feel like it allows them to, move the line to wherever they want it to be. So Senate Bill 326 applies to disciplinary action. Teachers or staff could be implicated. This is, again, another thing with free speech for students, which, again, all of this, I can't overlook it. I'm curious what you guys think. I can't overlook how, Charlie Kirk's whole mission was robust debate, free speech, being able to have these conversations with people that we don't agree with, and being able to have free speech. And now we've got, all of these laws being passed. And granted, the Texas bill was passed before Charlie Kirk was killed, but it's just like the right is using Charlie Kirk and his love for debate as like a talking point, a selling point to people. And yet they're passing all these laws that go against everything Charlie stood for. Okay. And then Wisconsin has a new bill. It's It hasn't passed yet. It's just been dropped. I think it was dropped in September. AB 446. This requires state agencies, local governments, and employees to consider the IHRA definition when evaluating evidence of discriminatory intent in laws, ordinances, policies, or criminal penalty enhancements. This is another bipartisan piece of legislation. Got to love it when the Republicans and Democrats work together. If I'm correct, Wisconsin has a Republican majority legislature, but a Democrat governor. Correct me if I'm wrong. The Wisconsin bill is broader in scope than both the Florida and the Texas law. It covers all government employees, and criminal cases with bias enhancements. And so they will look at if there's bias involved, which is similar to the language that we hear in Washington with their hate crime and hate speech laws. There's a huge First Amendment concern with this bill, just like the other two. But it basically would stifle political speech or lawful disagreement or criticism of the Israeli government, which could be labeled as anti-Semitic. So I think these are really going to be abused by people that don't like you. And if you say something that could be deemed anti-Semitic and someone who doesn't like you sees it or hears it or whatever, they may use that as weaponization against you. So definitely that could chill free expression in government policymaking, education, and public discourse. So that's one to watch. I want to bring up the timeline again so we can just sort of look at kind of where these all are. So we already did the May 2nd. And then in between May and September, Florida, Oklahoma, and Kansas all passed legislation, very similar legislation to what we just talked about Florida with the IHRA hate speech definition. And then in spring of this year of 2025, Virginia, Arkansas, Kentucky, Missouri, Nebraska, Tennessee, South Carolina, New Hampshire pass or reaffirm IHRA-based laws. And what that means is that some of those are legislation that passed as law, and some of those are executive orders by state governors. Now, the difference is with the executive order, that's not codified into law. So it's easy enough to, it's not a law. It's not in whatever state it is. It's not in their codes of laws. So it's not as easy to enforce. It's kind of like, we're going to recognize this. But it doesn't really mean a lot. Kind of similar to presidential executive orders, which we're going to get into that too. The Stop Hate Act was introduced this summer. It was in July, and this is a federal bill, and it's bipartisan as well. And it has the ADL is involved in this. And this really pertains mostly to what you say and do online. It allows social media platforms to police speech that they think is anti-Semitic. So that one is also very bad. And the penalties for the social media companies, it's like millions of dollars for every day that they, are out of compliance. Because the penalty is so steep, they are going to over police the speech of their people on the platform. So if you were a conservative on Facebook or Twitter during COVID, and you maybe got deplatformed, maybe you lost your account altogether. That's the kind of thing we're talking about. And then in August of this year, Florida universities were mandated to do a curriculum review, meaning that they had to review all the materials that mentioned Israel, Palestine, Zionism, and to make sure that they were in compliance with the Florida laws on anti-Semitism. And then in September, Kansas criminalized masked protest of Israel, and Oklahoma mandates anti-Semitism coordinators in the school. So if you're watching from Washington, this probably sounds a lot like some of the coordinators and some of the things that we've seen go on in Washington. Like you have your LGBTQ curriculum coordinator. To me, it's just a different flavor of a woke agenda. And I don't think that, you know, I don't agree with anti-Semitism, and the true definition of anti-Semitism. I believe this IHRA definition is very broad, and I believe it is intentionally broad to create fear in people so that they will feel like they can't speak, they can't say anything remotely critical of Israel, and that is what really bothers me about these particular policies, because that is completely anti-American. I want to circle back to the federal bills just for a second. We already talked about HR 6090, and that was that this year? No, that was last year. 6090 was last year, and then HR 867 was this year. This was this May, and they were what was happening here. This May 4th tweet that I have up from Charlie Kirk, they rushed it out of committee and they were rushing it to a floor vote, really trying to do it sort of under the radar so that citizens wouldn't see it and wouldn't know about it, wouldn't raise a ruckus like we did with HR 6090 the year before. So again, here is a HR 867, a bill that will criminalize private boycotts of Israel, fines up to $1 million, and prison time up to 20 years. Bills like this only create more anti-Semitism and play into growing narratives that Israel is running the U.S. government. In America, you are allowed to hold differing views. You are allowed to disagree and protest. We've allowed far too many people who hate America to move here from abroad, but the right to speak freely is the birthright of all Americans. This bill should not pass. Any Republican that votes for this bill will expose themselves. We will be watching very closely. Gosh, it makes me miss Charlie because we really need his voice, especially right now. There's another one on this. Oh, this might have been this was last year, but this was, again, Matt Walsh, who was also trying to educate people about the definitions and the examples of that were provided for the IHRA about what was anti-Semitism. So any criticism of Israel would be considered anti-Semitism. Now, just a few more points on the Stop Hate Act, because it was introduced. Well, there was a press conference in July, but the bill itself, I want to say it dropped during the shutdown. Like, it was actually filed and you could read the bill during the shutdown. I want to say I found it last month, but I have more details up on the screen now, so I can. So it focuses on content. They say it focuses on terrorist or violent content online, not general speech. But there's a $5 million a day fine for noncompliance. So what do you think the social media platforms are going to do? They're going to over regulate, what's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, you guys know what I'm saying. But they're going to over censor people online and what people can and cannot say, with a $5 million a day fine. Requires social media platforms to report violations, especially from foreign terrorist organizations or specially designed global terrorists. This would be like Grok anti-Semitic posts, Capitol Jewish Museum shooting disinformation is kind of one of the examples that they give here. And then just a reminder, Trump signed an executive order earlier this year. It was called the Protect Jewish Students from Harassment in Schools. The agencies involved here, the Education Department, the Department of Justice, Homeland Security, they would, Trump's EO wants to identify civil and criminal tools to combat anti-Semitism, hence these anti-Semitism bills that we're seeing. Inventory pending Title VI complaints and civil criminal cases. Use civil rights authorities where appropriate. Provide guidance on monitoring foreign nationals for activities that could violate immigration laws. Really, they're trying to focus on tangible harassment and discrimination. But one of the things that is really concerning me with the rhetoric that we're seeing on social media, these things are really getting ramped up. I just the other day, I shared a post, I think it was Patricia Heaton, the actress. Forget what she was on. Anyway, she had posted something about, if you say something, it was something weird, like, if you say something critical of Israel, then you hate Jews or something like that. And it was just so, so blatantly untrue. And, we can't be doing that to people. It was kind of, I equated it to being, during COVID, like if you didn't get a vaccine, it's because you wanted to kill your grandma. And that's not true. But these are the same arguments that we're seeing. In fact, if you, I would encourage you to go on YouTube and look up JP Sears' video. I think it's 5 or 6 days old now, but he talks about the woke mind virus and how what's happening with, on social media and in our culture right now as it pertains to Israel is really a lot of like what we see with, first it was transgender, and if you didn't say the right things about transgender, then you were, a transphobe. And then there was COVID. And if you didn't do and say the things about COVID, then you were a, science denier or whatever. I forget what they would say, but this is kind of the same thing. And it's really tactics that we've seen from the left. And it's really, really weird and disturbing to see it coming from the right. Even people that I would consider to be like really conservative and tolerant people, like, I don't know. It's just like it's like there's no room for discussion on the issue. And I think that's really strange. And it reminds me a lot of trying to have discussions with people who have very strong feelings about LGBTQ issues, DEI issues, and COVID. They would just shut down the conversation. And this, I feel very similar, is that if you have any questions or criticisms, even just questions, if you're just seeking information and you're trying to get to the truth and things aren't adding up, and so you're asking questions, it's really weird to me to see people on the right just shutting that down. And even people that I would consider to be like friends, like in real life friends, that have no tolerance for me asking some questions and wanting to find out more and wanting to learn more, because I'm not an expert on Israel. I never have been. And, with my church back in Washington, they said we support Israel. So I'm like, okay, we support Israel. Why? I mean, like, and, I'm not going to, I am having a pastor from Washington State, Pastor DJ Rabe of the House Church in Snohomish, will be on with me next week on November 18th. We're going to do, he's going to go through the Bible, and I'm going to give him some questions. We're going to be talking about some of the things Charlie was seeking answers to. And cause he was the first person, I think, in Washington to actually host Charlie Kirk. And so he actually, he knows Charlie. I think they spent some time together when Charlie was out. And so we're going to walk through, what does the Bible say about some of these questions, which is, at least for me as a Christian, that's where I want to go. I want to go to the Bible to get my truth. I don't want to get schooled by a social media influencer telling me what I have to think about the Bible and about Israel. So I did a Substack on, nope, wrong link. I did a Substack on the hate speech laws and the anti-Semitism stuff. And it has links to all the bills. It has links to the IHRA definition. If you want to go check that out, if you want to look at more of that, if you want to learn more about this, I would encourage you to grab that Substack and share it. I've shared it on my social media. It's on the Conservative Ladies of America social media. This is something that citizens really need to understand. And Charlie, like I said earlier, Charlie basically single-handedly killed these bills. And Charlie's not here to do that again. And so it's going to take all of us. And the work is even going to be harder now in his absence, because the right is so fractured. And so half of the right are going to go along with these bills, which again are promoted by Republicans, sponsored by Republicans. So it's going to be really kind of the remnant of us to fight against it. But we have to, it's our duty as Americans. And if you believe in the Constitution and you believe that our laws and our government should be guided by the Constitution, then we have to speak up. And I think that I really believe, it's so much money in politics and government, and it really is such a sewer, and it's getting worse every day. But all that money and all that influence of these outside people, we, the people, still have the loudest voice. We, the people, are the ones that vote. We, the people, have the power to fire you or hire you as our elected representatives. And so it's important that we remember that. And if you are in one of these blue states that just elected some socialists like Washington or New York, and you're like looking to move, looking for the U-Haul, I really just want to encourage you that wherever you go, please get involved in government, a local, local government is so important, and people really need to understand that local government really impacts you more than anything else. So get involved in your local government network, find a group that you can engage with. If you go somewhere and you don't know how to get plugged in, please reach out to us, conservativeladiesofamerica.com. We work with people all over the country, and we have our own people that have kind of spread out. So we will do what we can to help you get plugged into your new community, but that's really important. And, we've got midterm elections coming up next year. And it's going to be really important for all of us to get involved and support conservative candidates, and especially the ones who aren't backed by what I'll call the establishment, the political machine. They're going to need a lot of help. Like I mentioned, Aaron Baker, who's going to try to defeat Congressman Randy Fine here in Florida. Aaron's going to need a lot of help from we, the people. And so we've got to all step up and do our part to make sure that we are electing good people to represent us, people who will abide by the Constitution and be accountable to the constituents that they are elected to serve, because they are servants of we, the people. And if we don't stand up and remind them, they won't care. So thank you so much for joining me for another Thursday live stream. I will be back next Thursday. Can you believe Thanksgiving is 2 weeks from today? I won't be here on Thanksgiving, but I will be back next week, and I hope to see you. I will be here at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. I hope you all have a fantastic weekend. And please do make sure that you go check out our website, check out the Substack, conservativeladiesofamerica.com. And I hope you have a fantastic weekend, and I will see you next week.